City Current. Produced by Dakota Media Access. In-depth discussion with Bismarck and Mandan city officials. Watch on Government Access Channel 602 HD or tune in to Radio Access 102.5 FM. Always local, always current.
Welcome to City Current Bismarck edition, along with Bismarck City Administrator Jason Timonek. I'm Tom Gerhardt from Dakota Media Access, and I guess we need to acknowledge right off the bat, this is a big change for you, and for the first time in over 300 some episodes, I believe, Mary Van Sickle is outside knocking on the window, looking in on us.
Peeking in. She said she was going to distract us, but she's still in the building, but it's your show now.
Yeah.
So
I've really come to enjoy the value of finding out what's happened at the prior evening's commission meetings in Bismarck in your case, and then in Mandan with Jim Neubauer. So last night's meeting went over 3 hours. We'll talk about some of the hot topics, I guess, eventually, like Tyler Parkway, the expansion project there, but kind of start at the top of the agenda, Jason. And there were two meetings, I guess, last night. The Board of Equalization met, annual report. Touch on some of the highlights that came out of that.
definitely. So Board of Equalization is the city commission. They gavel in as the Board of Equalization through North Dakota Century Code. All communities must meet as the Board of Equalization annually. And the purpose there is to receive the annual report from the assessor's office and to accept the valuations of all the commercial and residential property, but it also gives property owners an opportunity to raise concerns with the valuations that have been assigned to their properties. And so a number of those individuals received letters. So our assessing division sends out letters to anybody whose property value increased by more than 10%, or I believe it's $3,000 year over year. And so a high number of letters go out to people, and oftentimes what that does is it generates a conversation between the property owner and our staff. And the staff has an opportunity to explain the process of how valuations are arrived upon, but the homeowner or the property owner has an opportunity to say, please come and physically look at my home. If an assessor hasn't been in your home in a number of years, some assumptions can be made based on similar properties in the community. If your house is relatively unchanged in the last 30 years, that might be something to have the assessors realize, because it could be a reflection on your valuation. Same said, if you have made significant improvements in the last few years without obtaining a permit, and you have some extravagant things that the city may not have been aware of previously, that could have an impact on your value as well. So in the end, we had a good number of people engaged with staff. We didn't see anybody at the podium last night specifically with concerns about their valuations, but what we did have is a report from our city assessor, Allison Jensen, and I just wanted to talk about some of the kind of the interesting data that's there.
We can take a look. We have a photo of the report cover, and then to your point, we just pulled this out, a taxable valuation comparison, and I love statistics and baseball and sports and Facebook analytics and things like that. So this is fascinating. You mentioned, the residential and commercial growth in Bismarck it's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. When you look at a market value comparison from 2024 to 2025, the value of commercial property in the city of Bismarck, and this is the value of the buildings and the value of the land, the total commercial valuation based on market comparisons was just over $4 billion with a B. This year, the valuation is $4.173 billion, or an increase of about 3.69%. That's year over year. And so some might say, well, where is that growth coming from? It often comes from new construction. We as a community are very fortunate. For the last 20 years, we have seen very sustainable, intentional growth, not just on the residential side of things, but also on the commercial side of things. And these numbers reflect that type of growth. When you compare the residential valuations, again, at market value comparison, total residential property in 2024 in the city of Bismarck was just over $7 billion. 2025 valuations is just under $7.4 billion. So about a $374 million change, about 5.33%. When you average that across all the properties, we're at about a 4.7% market growth from 2024 to 2025.
Yeah.
That's a pretty healthy
That's
foundation.
I was going to say, and your
That's
assessment
great.
would be that's a really healthy growth for
It
this area, good indicators.
It is. And new growth obviously comes new services, new challenges for us as an organization, but it also provides the revenue. The property tax collections that come from new construction is what sustains a community when it's growing. And so we're very fortunate that we have a nice balance of growth, but we're also able to continue to provide those services in those newer areas. So just a little nugget to share. Most communities will have these types of comparisons year over year, but I think it's just nice to share that information with people and
Yeah.
help them understand. It's more than just assigning a dollar value to a specific piece of property.
And to the initial point, to know as a homeowner, there's a process that I can go through, and your staff is willing and ready to have those conversations. So I
Definitely.
think that's key.
Yep.
Well, the city commission then gavelled in and right away talked about something I know that you're awfully proud of, and that's the Citizen Academy. And they recognized the cadets. Are they called cadets?
We've started calling them cadets. We refer to them as seasons. So we
Okay.
had season 4 of Citizen Academy. It was a great opportunity to talk about the program again, invite everybody that was able to join us. We didn't have everyone from the class this year, but we had a great turnout. It was fun talking about the program. Some of them shared their stories and experiences. A lot of gratitude for the staff. 12 weeks, 3 hours every Thursday. You get to know these people, and it's not just us as staff getting to know them, but I am very confident to know that there are relationships, friendships that have formed
They're getting
as a
to know each
result
other.
of each other being
Yeah.
in this program and going through these experiences together. And I kind of joked with them all on our last week at the police station. I said, okay, now that you've all been through this, you all have a responsibility to go out and volunteer for an advisory board or run for an elected position or do something with this new information that you've learned. And a couple of them talked about that last night when they shared their remarks. And so a lot of gratitude for them. I realize everybody's busy, and to commit to something for 12 weeks at the beginning of the year, dead of winter, it's dark, it's cold outside, and one of the participants, one of the cadets said, when the class started, I was tired and hungry, and by the end of the night, I was jazzed up and didn't want to leave. And that's probably one of the best endorsements that you can get, is there was just genuine enthusiasm. And I'm excited to see where the program goes from here. We plan to continue to do this year over year. We're always looking for a way to bring it to more people. I say this about the program. It's tremendously effective, but it's terribly inefficient. We're only talking to 20 people at a time, and we've got 77,000 people that call this place
Right.
home. So if anyone's got ideas, and we ask the cadets as well, we ask them for their feedback. We want them to tell us, what do you think would make this experience even more valuable than it already is? So we'll talk about Citizen Academy again in November. That's when we take applications for the following year.
Okay.
And so we'll definitely bring this one back around again. But thanks to everybody that was part of it. Thanks to the staff. As I mentioned last night, there was probably around 80 different city staff that came together over the 12 weeks and now 13 weeks, because we're actually going to do a bonus tour at the wastewater treatment plant.
Go to see Travis.
Backed by popular demand. The group, this will be the third year now that the group has requested a tour of the wastewater treatment plant. So kudos to them. And from where I'm at as the administrator of the city, just a heartfelt thank you to all the staff and the directors and the participants, because this is no small lift. I also need to say this with a smile on my face. To the best of my knowledge, we are the only city in North Dakota.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
We are the only ones that are offering this program right now, and I'm not trying to boast, but I am very proud that we can do that, and I think that it is paying off. We even have a current city commissioner at the table who was part of season 1.
Yeah, you're called to Public Service Commissioner Risch. You mentioned, can you give back? And he definitely heeded that call.
He answered the call, and we've heard it from others going through this experience gave them the confidence to step up and volunteer or run for other things, because they held a base of knowledge that it starts that spark of interest, it starts that engagement, and there's so much to learn.
Understanding.
Yep.
Those early relationships.
Connections.
You feel probably a little bit
Absolutely.
more comfortable moving into a place or into a spot on a commission or something, having a baseline knowledge of what's happening. And I know you've been involved in this since the beginning. You're going to pass the torch to
I am.
Assistant City Administrator Doug Wiles.
Yep.
And
I've told Doug it's his program, and whatever changes he wants to make it'll be great. I don't doubt that whatever happens will only enhance the experience. And my role, hopefully, in the future will be limited to just that first week when the administration department is on display. So look forward to where we go from here, but it's been a joy. It's been certainly a time commitment, but it's one of those things that fills my cup.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And I can tell, listening to, as you said, a lot of the cadets coming to the microphone last night. And by the way, you can listen to what they had to say.
Good point.
On dakotamediaaccess.org if you go to our government access site, watch the meeting or watch that portion. But the amount of gratitude overall in that room was really heartwarming last night. So
yeah.
the Mayor's Welcome Initiative proclamation, I wanted to mention that quickly because I know that's something that means a lot to him. And
It does.
what's going on with the proclamation, and I know there's some things in action coming up.
Definitely. And so
Motion.
the mayor reads proclamations. Generally, this time of the year, we'll see 2 or 3 proclamations on a lot of agendas. Oftentimes, the proclamations are focused on the community. And we get requests for proclamations from national organizations. And we often tell them, unless you have a specific tie to Bismarck, we respectfully decline to accept your offer. In this case, the proclamation that the mayor read last night is very near and dear to his values, and it is talking about where home means more than hello. And the mayor has been talking about this for quite some time. Bismarck is a friendly place, but we're not always very welcoming. And the initiative here is to create opportunities to welcome new residents by engaging them and the business owners and help them take that extra step to become integrated into the fabric of our community. And not to go back to Citizen Academy again, but we heard that last night from one of the participants. She said, now that I've been through this, this is my home. I feel a part of this. And the mayor is looking for more opportunities to foster that type of experience for people. And we've heard when someone is new to a community, you generally have 12 months to help them decide if they want to stay there or if they want to find somewhere else that brings them joy. And if we can create more reasons for people to want to stay in Bismarck, all the better.
Yeah.
It adds to the culture, the diversity, the experiences for everybody here.
And it ties back to our initial conversation today about the growth taking place in Bismarck, and those go hand in hand.
Definitely, yeah. And so you'll be hearing more from the mayor, not just Mayor of Bismarck, but also City of Mandan is going to be participating in this. And so over the next few days, more and more information will be coming out about the Mayor's Welcome Initiative. But we certainly support him in this endeavor and want to find more ways to help him find success here too.
A lot of items on the consent agenda last night, but one thing I just pulled aside that I found interesting was the South Capitol Survey project. I know there's an assessment growing. We have a picture of a map, kind of show you the area that we're talking about just south of the Capitol from Boulevard down to, is it Avenue A?
I think it's Avenue A on the south end, and then about 4th Street to 6th Street, roughly, so a real concentrated corridor. This corridor is very interesting because it links the activities at the Capitol with downtown, but there's also some very prominent architecture. There's some very significant individuals that have lived in these neighborhoods. It's just a really neat part of our community. And there's my time with the city. I spent 10 years in the community development department. There was always conversations about how do we connect the Capitol with downtown? How do we connect downtown to the river? Well, this study will help do that in another way, and it's a research project essentially that will be performed by South Fork Historical Research Company, and it will be an assessment of the properties within that boundary that we described. And this kind of ties back to a study that the city did in 2014. It was called the Downtown Sub-Area Study. One of the projects that was recommended was actually a self-guided heritage tour, a cultural historic tour, identifying the significant properties between downtown and the Capitol. So this isn't necessarily a new idea, but this is a kind of a reconstitution of that effort, and very glad to see the Historic Preservation Commission moving forward on this. The cost of the project is $15,000. It'll start in May of this year and take about 13 months until full delivery. So next year in June, when we're talking about elections in June of 2026, we can also talk about the results of the the cultural heritage study that was done in just south of the Capitol grounds.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. That's a lot of interest, as you said, a lot of history in that area. So anxious to see what comes of that. The regular agenda last night from the City Commission, just talking about the Human Relations Committee. They released their annual report and walk us through some of the talking points there.
Absolutely. Human Relations Committee, this is one of the many advisory boards. The City Administration Department is the staff support for this particular advisory committee. Human Relations Committee typically meets once a month, and they do a number of events throughout the year. The annual report kind of showcases some of the things that they're doing, and it's things like participating in the Juneteenth celebration or the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration in January. One of the projects that they're spending a lot of time and seeing a lot of valuable feedback is these community conversations that have been hosted at the library. I think they've done 3 or 4 to this point. There's another one coming up scheduled for May 8th. It'll be in the Tom Baker Meeting Room, not the library this time. Tom Baker Meeting Room, and the topic there is public transportation. And obviously with the recent election in November, there's a new half-cent sales tax. 2/5 of that half-cent is dedicated to public transportation. And so bringing that topic into the light and hearing from the community on what does quality public transportation look like, or paratransit transportation as well, because that is certainly a component of Bismarck Transit. So definitely want to plug that May 8th coming up. But then also, I think, because we are in the radio studio here at Dakota Media Access, I think one of the outcomes or one of the projects that the Human Relations Committee is most proud of is the podcast, These Are Your Neighbors. And Sargiana Woodsky and Tia Jorgensen are the hosts of that program. I think I heard him say last night, episode 53, recently aired here on Dakota Media Access, Radio Access, wherever you get your podcasts. And so those two women do a fantastic job. I've been a guest on that program. I've listened to almost all of them to this point. And it really gives them a chance to get out and shine a light on other people in the community that are doing good things, organizations, businesses, individuals, whatever the case might be. And I give them a lot of credit for the work that it goes into that program. They've really honed their craft, and look forward to hearing more of that. But they definitely wanted to talk about that as part of their annual report as well.
And I got a chance to visit with both of them last week here, and they're so passionate about this podcast and telling the stories of our neighbors here in Bismarck. So it's been a fantastic local content that we're proud to have and offer to folks to listen to. And Tia and Sargiana do, as you said, a terrific job. And in the photo we had up, I guess Commissioner Risch makes another appearance.
He did. That guy's everywhere. I see him all over town, and I know he was a recent guest. I think they've had other commissioners as guests in the past. And so if you're not familiar with the program, I would put in a plug to either go to the Radio Access website, go to the Radio Access app, go to any place you get your downloads for your podcasts, and just search These Are Your Neighbors, and I bet you'll find somebody that you know that has been a guest.
One of the hot topics last night, or maybe probably the item that took up the most time, was the Tyler Parkway expansion project. And I know this has been talked about now going back over 2 decades.
Yeah, since the mid-90s, I think, when we
And-
started long-range transportation planning.
And a decision was made last night.
A decision was made, a unanimous decision. All 5 commissioners voted to support the recommendations that came forward. And Tyler Parkway, for those that know, is a pretty important route north and south. And we've got a gap in a section just north of Valley Drive, and that section that would be extended would tie into, I believe it's Cogburn Road, which
Let's show some photos while you're talking about it. So, not to interrupt you, Jason.
No, that's
but
fine.
You can see that green space, and then I'll just forward, and here's really the proposed extension, and you can pick up where you left off, and I'll show a couple other photos.
So for those that do have a screen in front of them, what you're looking at is the intersection of Tyler Parkway, which runs north and south, runs to the top of the screen being north, and then Valley Drive runs east and west, left to right across the screen. There is a gap in Tyler Parkway due to the topography, due to the challenging construction type, due to the drainage that's through there. And frankly, Tyler Parkway has developed as the neighborhoods around it have come in also. I mean, Tyler Parkway, for what it's worth, was, you know, originally constructed in the late 80s, early 90s. And now here we are almost 40 years later, and we're finishing that piece. If you think about Tyler Parkway, it starts, you know, near exit 157 on the south end, and once this connection has been made, this road will really extend all the way up to Highway 1804, which it then transitions into the county, and the name changes, but it becomes 15th Street. And 15th Street goes all the way up to 110th Avenue, and then it turns into a minimum maintenance road from there. So I guess really what I'm saying here is this will be one of the longest north-south corridors in Bismarck and into Burley County. The project will be paid for using the half-cent sales tax dollars. That was an election that was held back in 2018. We started collecting a half-cent sales tax for major roadway construction projects like this one. We've also done 43rd Avenue, South Washington Street, Ash Coulee. This year we'll be doing the extension of East Century Avenue over towards 52nd Street. All of that is being paid for using local sales tax dollars. And so we did have some opposition last night from the neighbors. We held a public input meeting at Elk Ridge back in March and heard a fair bit of opposition as well. And much of that comment was relating to the preservation of green space, concerns with traffic volumes, traffic speed. And I think that was probably the most common concern that I heard at all the public input opportunities and feedback that was provided electronically, whether it be through the survey or whatnot. And so recognizing, how do we calm some of that traffic? How do we quiet some of that speed down? And that came through the recommendations. One of the proposals is to propose a 3-lane section, meaning you've got a north lane and a south lane and then a center lane in the middle to do your left turns. There will also be some mini roundabouts installed and a pavement markings as well, and some landscaping in here. And the whole idea is to narrow that driving corridor. If you think about, you get over on East Century Avenue sometimes, east of 26th Street, it's wide open. You got 5 lanes. Yep. It almost looks like a freeway over there, and it's hard not to speed. And even the police chief mentioned it last night. He said,
Chief Draven,
you got to look down. You got to make sure you're not going too fast. And so the idea of narrowing the roadway creates this environment that you do need to be more cautious. You do need to slow down, and that's the idea here, is you are traveling primarily through a residential corridor. We're not trying to make a bypass or a freeway. We're trying to connect, and we're trying to connect neighborhoods, not just for the purpose of connecting neighborhoods, but primarily also we're thinking about emergency responders. We heard from the fire chief and the police chief last night that this roadway connection is important because we will continue to grow to the north and the west from here, and having this will save time, create a more direct route for emergency services and Metro Ambulance, which is another emergency provider separate from the city of Bismarck. So I understand that there is some opposition, but I also understand the need for the project, and I think that's where our commission landed as well, is that with a 5-0 vote to support. To me, that says that you're not going to make everybody happy with this one, but for the greater good of the community, this is the right time and place for this project.
And you mentioned how it would be paid for, but it caught my ear last night that there won't be any special assessments.
Correct.
Because of that half-cent sales tax. And then I think another key thing just to talk about is when construction will begin.
Sure. And so final design will occur going forward, and what we heard from City Engineer Gabe Schell is it will be a 2-year construction timeline. First year, there will be some earthwork and an embankment created to help essentially hold up the roadway that will cross over the coulee, and there will be a large culvert system to allow stormwater to move through the coulee. There will also be a pedestrian underpass at some point so people can, safely traverse. But the purpose of building the embankment in year 1 is to allow that structure to settle into place. We've got some tricky soils in this area, and to give it time to just be where it wants to be, and then come back the following year and then connect the roadway. So yes, we will see construction likely starting in 26 and then completing in 27. And maybe even spilling into 28. Oftentimes we'll see some of that landscaping and those soft touches at the end.
And I know there's also a lot of folks, it sounds like, through public comment or the past meeting, that are concerned about the trails and the nature and things. And we have another map that's kind of a lot to look at, but I know that's something we talked about just ahead of city current was making sure that that vision and the outdoor activities and the wildlife that people like to enjoy, that's being taken into consideration as
It
well.
can all coexist. And I think the one thing that I failed to mention about the street itself, the project, it does include a multi-use trail parallel to the roadway. And so sidewalk, curb and gutter, lighting, roadway surface, that's all part of this project as well. But making those connections for pedestrian and bicyclists is important as well. And so not just the paved trails, but also the single track trails that are down into the green, the open space areas. Those are, we were talking before, those are some pretty special places for a lot of people, and certainly not looking to compromise that in any way, but at the same time, a growing city has things that need to be addressed, and I think this falls into that category.
Something that maybe a smaller group of people have interest in, but what's been happening up at Misty Waters, and there was a appeal for a zoning map amendment last night, and there was also a decision made last night, so I guess we can show people a map of the area that we're talking about, and then you can fill us in on what happened.
Sure. So Misty Waters, for anyone that's not familiar with that neighborhood, it's in the extraterritorial area. It's outside city limits, north of Bismarck. It's a neighborhood that is zoned as a planned unit development, or oftentimes you hear the acronym PUD. And some might say, well, what is a PUD, a planned unit development? And I often describe it as a one-of-a-kind, tailor-made zoning district just for that neighborhood. And why is a PUD necessary at Misty Waters? Primarily because the edges of these properties, a lot of them touch the river or a man-made bay that was created for the neighborhood. When you're building along the river, you've got things to be mindful of, whether it be setbacks, the high water mark, a LOMAR, which is another acronym for a letter of map revision. It's a FEMA term dealing with floodplain and your ability to manipulate the ground and the land around it. And so this neighborhood was originally started in 2006, and since that time a number of homes have been built. And unfortunately back in, I think it was 2024, a home was constructed that caused a fair amount of turmoil in the neighborhood, and the project ended up coming back to the city commission on multiple occasions. And the root of the issue was whether or not the home exceeded its boundaries on the face of the plat. Did it encroach into the setback? Was it beyond the LOMAR line? A lot of moving parts. And for the neighborhood, a very important issue because it sets the stage moving forward. For the commissioners last night, the appeal actually was a little unique. The appeal came from city staff. And the appeal was the appeal of the decision made by the Planning and Zoning Commission to deny the zoning change. So we're getting into some really kind of granular bureaucratic government stuff here, and for anybody that's following along, this has been a very long conversation. In the end, where we are as of last night, we ended up with a split vote. We had 3 commissioners voting to overturn the decision of the Planning Commission and 2 commissioners voting to support the decision of the Planning Commission. So following the majority, the next step in this process will essentially be to call for a public hearing at the City Commission level, hold a public hearing, which will likely be at the meeting on May 13th of 2025, and the City Commission will have final say over this matter, hopefully once and for all, and we can address all the concerns and correct anything that needs to be adjusted and just simply move forward with this entire neighborhood.
Well, let's head back to the Capitol. Legislative session continues. What did you say? We're on day
59?
59
Yeah.
out of a potential 80, but you mentioned they're hoping to save a few days.
It
so
seems
it
like
could be a couple of weeks, and we could be looking at...
I feel like we're getting very close to the end. We're starting to see a lot of bills either meet their demise or work their way through conference committee. The governor signed a number of things over the last few weeks. We're still focusing on a fair number of bills, but really 3 that are kind of most interesting right now. House Bill 1020, we talked about that last night. We've talked about it on the program before. That's the bill that has the budget for the State Water Commission. In that budget was or is an appropriation dollar amount for South Bismarck Flood Control Project. This is a very big project that we are considering as a result of FEMA coming through and remapping the floodplain area. House Bill 1020 is still working its way through committee. Sorry to report to our commissioners last night that the initial appropriation that was identified was, I think, $73 million of a $173 million project. The current dollar amount that is showing, anyway, has been reduced to $20 million, a significant reduction, not just for Bismarck, but a lot of the projects that are in that pool are seeing similar cuts. Just the state just doesn't have the money to go around to support some of these flood control projects. So we'll still definitely going to engage with that one and do our best to help them understand the project from our perspective. House Bill 1389, I mentioned this one last night. This one was killed by the Senate. This bill would have enabled municipal governments to forego special assessments and in turn create a monthly street utility fee. This would have been a fee that would have showed up on your utility bill, just like your garbage and recycling and water usage. The city would have used those dollars to do the street maintenance projects and eliminate special assessments for street maintenance. That one kind of got a little cumbersome through the House. There were some amendments that were put on it, and the amendments essentially made the bill really undesirable from our perspective. So we weren't sad to see that one get killed. And then the last bill, and this is the one that I think a lot of people are very interested in as it relates to property taxes, House Bill 1176. This has gone through some changes on the Senate side. There's a 25% minimum amount that you have to pay for property tax. They're labeling that the skin in the game clause. There's also a reduction in the maximum exemption. It started at $1,550. Now it's down to $1,250. I think this one's going back and forth. So there might be some politics tied to this one. Yeah. I'm not so sure, but we are definitely still interested, still engaged, still at the table, trying to provide information when we can. But at this point, most of the hearings have subsided, and it's just a lot of conference committee and committee work, and we're doing our best to try and keep tabs on all of it.
Yeah, now is the time where you really have to keep your eye on what's happening.
Changes can happen. They can come
like
quickly.
That.
They can come out of nowhere. So we're not done, and of course we continue to rely on our partners at the North Dakota League of Cities. Matt, Stephanie, Bill, Corey, they're doing a great job keeping track of all of those things for not just Bismarck, but the 354 other communities in North Dakota. So thanks to the dedication and the talent that they bring to the table as well. We couldn't do it without them.
Jason, thanks for a great conversation. You mentioned it earlier, but I just want to let people know, do you have our apps? If you don't, please download them. Dakota Media Access, you can get our community access and government access channels, connections on that. Our radio access app has a lot of great podcast hosts, a lot of great DJs, awesome music. So there's a lot of places that you can get this information and watch the commission meetings, see the agendas and consume them. We're putting the QR codes on the city commission meetings so people at home can get them on their iPad.
Scan the agenda.
Scan the agenda. And so, the whole idea is just to make it all more accessible for our residents and help them get the pulse of what's happening in Bismarck.
I've said this to a lot of people. I'm going to say it one more time, and I'll probably say it 10 more times again down the road. But for us, Dakota Media Access is a demonstration of transparency in government. This is what it looks like when we talk about transparency in government. We're breaking down the meetings, we're providing information, links, different stories about what we are doing here. Citizen Academy is another example of that. And so we couldn't do that without you guys here and everybody that's behind the scenes and making that happen. So, and all of this would be lost without an audience. So for anybody that's listening, watching, sharing, thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate
that as well. Thanks for taking your time to learn a little bit about the towns you live in.
For Jason Tomanek, Bismarck City Administrator, I'm Tom Gerhardt. Thanks for joining us.
For more information on what was discussed in this episode of City Current, visit bismarcknd.gov or call 701-355-1300. If you have suggestions, comments, or issues you would like addressed in future episodes, contact us at info@freetv.org. This program airs on Government Access, Channel 2 and 602 in HD, or on Radio Access 102.5 FM. It's also available as a podcast on radioaccess.org and as a video viewing link at freetv.org. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of City Current.